Yeah, you're grilling me on President Trump and some photograph with Epstein? Come on.
The question is, did the FBI find those photographs that have been discussed publicly by a witness who claimed Jeffrey Epstein showed them to him? You don't know anything about that. Okay?
Todd Blanche recently stated the investigation of Mr. Holman was subjected to a full review by the FBI, agents, and DOJ prosecutors. They found no credible evidence of any wrongdoing.
And that was not my question. My question was, what became of the $50,000 in cash that the FBI delivered, evidently in a paper bag, to Mr. Holman?
Senator, I'd look at your facts.
Are you saying that they did not deliver $50,000 in cash to Mr. Holman?
Senator, as recently stated, the investigation of Mr. Holman was subjected to a full review
different question.
by the FBI agents,
That's a
by
different
Department
question.
of Justice prosecutors. They found no evidence of wrongdoing.
That's a different question. What became of the $50,000? Did the FBI get it back?
Mr. Whitehouse, excuse me, Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to talk to the FBI.
The report to you, can't you answer this question?
Senator Whitehouse, you're welcome to discuss this with Director Patel.
Did Holman keep the $50,000?
As Deputy Attorney General Todd Blanche recently stated, the investigation of Mr.
Never
Holman
mind. I can
was
see I'm not going to get a straight
full
answer from you to a very simple
by the
question.
FBI agents and the DOJ.
Do
They
you
found
know-
no credible evidence of wrongdoing. You know, you're very concerned about money and people taking money, and you rail against
wait a
dark
second,
money.
wait a second, wait a
Yet you
second,
work with dark
wait a
money
second.
groups all the time, Senator
Wait a second.
Whitehouse.
Did you know?
In 47 seconds, the courtroom transformed into a silent battlefield. Cameras were focused on Pam Bondi, the former prosecutor turned attorney general, as Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, known for his direct methods and meticulously prepared files, began to unfold his attack. In front of him, a thick dossier covered in notes and red marks. At the heart of the scandal, a mysterious cash payment of $50,000 handed over by the FBI to a certain Mr. Holman in a paper bag. Whitehouse had just one simple question: where did that money go? Yet, from the very first words, it was clear that Bondi was not going to play fair. She responded with vague formulas, repeating that the investigation was conducted, no irregularities found, without ever saying whether the FBI had recovered the sum. The tension rose immediately. The public, journalists, and even committee members seemed to hold their breath. Behind the calm tone of the senator lay a chilling determination. "That's not what I'm asking you," he said in a measured voice. "I'm asking where that money went, Ms. Bondi." She dodged again, almost verbatim repeating the same phrase, like a bureaucratic shield. The more she evaded, the more electric the atmosphere became. One could feel Whitehouse's frustration, but also Bondi's strange confidence, as if she knew she would never have to answer. It was this contrast that fascinated. On one side, a senator demanding accountability on behalf of the people; on the other, a government official turning every question into smoke. Behind the padded walls of the Senate chamber, one could almost hear the gears of power grinding. The tone escalated, gazes hardened, and at the center of it all, one question hung in the air, haunting and heavy with meaning: what does this $50,000 cash affair really conceal? This was no longer just a hearing. It was the beginning of a political duel where every word, every silence, every turn of phrase could change the course of a career, or even reveal the shadows of a much larger system. As the session continued, the tone between Senator Whitehouse and Pam Bondi grew even tenser. Whitehouse, unflappable, stared at the minister with icy intensity. He was not trying to trap her, but to expose what he saw as a blatant inconsistency. How could a cash sum of $50,000 disappear without a trace, without a receipt, without proof of restitution? He repeated the question again and again, like a political metronome. But Bondi, true to her avoidance strategy, responded by citing internal reports and invoking procedure. The FBI and the Department of Justice reviewed the case. They found no evidence of wrongdoing. In the room, some senators exchanged incredulous glances. "Have you recovered the $50,000? Whitehouse repeated. "I invite you to ask Director Patel," Bondi replied, dodging once more. "But you are the Attorney General," the senator insisted. "You have authority over this investigation. You lead the department." Bondi remained upright, impassive. "I invite you to consult the FBI, Senator." This obstinate refusal to answer transformed the room into a theater of tension. Behind the camera flashes, one could feel the frustration of the public and journalists, witnesses to a scene where words seemed to carry no weight. Bondi's credibility took a hit, as the more she spoke, the more her answers sounded hollow. Whitehouse continued with surgical precision. He asked if the money had been reported for tax purposes, if the FBI had traced the payment, if the beneficiary had been questioned. With each question, the same formula: no irregularities were found. But behind this phrase, everyone understood it was a carefully constructed barrier. The tension escalated when Senator Sheldon Whitehouse, visibly exasperated, decided to push the exchange to its limits. "Ms. Bondi, don't take this room for a theater. We are looking for facts," he declared in a firm voice. The air seemed to freeze. Cameras zoomed in, capturing every micro-expression. Pam Bondi, however, offered a slight smile, the kind of polite smile that hides miles of political calculation. Whitehouse then changed tactics. Instead of insisting on the missing cash, he brought up Judge Amal J. Bowe, accused of ethical misconduct in another case related to the same network of investigations. "What happened to the OPR report regarding Judge Bowe?" he asked. This time, the response was immediate. "It's an internal matter, Senator. I will not discuss ongoing cases." Another dodge, but firmer, colder. The public sensed that something more serious was at stake. Whitehouse, refusing to back down, leaned closer to his microphone. "Ms. Bondi, the OPR always publicly announces its investigations and publishes a summary of its findings. Why this silence? Why is this file sealed?" The minister took a deep breath before responding. Each word weighed. "I will not comment on personnel matters." A terse statement, devoid of emotion. But behind this apparent calm, the pressure was intensifying. At that precise moment, Kash Patel entered the conversation. Whitehouse cited his name as one would draw a decisive card from a deck. Patel, former FBI director, had testified behind closed doors about dubious financial transactions and the existence of sealed documents. How and why was Patel's testimony sealed? The senator shot back. Bondi briefly raised her eyes, then lowered her tone. "I cannot discuss sealed testimonies, Senator." The room reacted. Whispers swept through the assembly. It was the first time Bondi had indirectly acknowledged the existence of such testimony. Whitehouse pressed on. "So it has indeed been sealed." "I have confirmed nothing," she replied immediately. The exchange became electric. Each measured the weight of every word, for this simple acknowledgement could trigger a political storm. And in this tense face-off, two truths collided, the one the senator sought to reveal, and the one Bondi was desperately trying to bury under the weight of procedure. The silence after the exchange was almost as heavy as the accusations themselves. All eyes were now fixed on Pam Bondi, whose Olympian calm was beginning to crack under the harsh glare of the cameras. Senator Whitehouse leaned back toward his microphone, ready to launch another attack. "Since you cannot speak about sealed testimonies, perhaps you can confirm this. Kash Patel stated that the Department of Justice, your department, approved the release of his deposition. Is that true, yes or no?" Pam Bondi, visibly irritated, adjusted her papers before responding in a controlled but icy tone. These decisions fall under the direction of the FBI, not my office. You should direct that question to Mr. Patel. The senator would not be deterred. You are the Attorney General of the United States, Ms. Bondi. The FBI operates under your authority. If a document has been made public, it is under your supervision. A murmur swept through the room. The tension was reaching its peak. Bondi, seeing the deadlock closing in, resorted to a classic strategy: delegation. If this document is public, we will provide you with a copy, Senator. A phrase meant to close the discussion, but it had the opposite effect. Whitehouse, sarcastic, retorted. If when your own director has already testified under oath that this document has been released. You don't know what your department is publishing. The tone escalated. The microphones picked up every syllable. In the gallery, advisors whispered. Others frantically typed on their tablets. Bondi, seemingly unperturbed, knew that any mistake could cost her dearly. She then decided to counterattack. Senator, before questioning the integrity of others, perhaps you should explain why you accepted financial contributions from Mr. Reid Hoffman, a close associate of Epstein, in 2018 and 2024. The room froze. It was a spectacular turnaround. Whitehouse straightened up, clearly caught off guard. We are talking about a payment from the FBI, not partisan politics, he exclaimed. But the retort had already hit its mark. In 47 seconds, the atmosphere in the audition room transformed into a political battlefield. What had started as a technical question about a sum of $50,000 turned into a personal duel between Senator Sheldon Whitehouse and Attorney General Pam Bondi. The audience, hanging on every word, witnessed a spectacle of rare intensity, where each phrase seemed to weigh tons. Whitehouse, after taking a hit on Reid Hoffman, spoke again with calculated calm. Madam Attorney, diverting the conversation won't make the money disappear. It's not my bank account the public wants to examine today. It's yours. Where has that money gone? Bondi, slightly tense, forced a professional smile, that of a seasoned lawyer used to verbal ambushes. Senator, as I said, the investigation was entirely conducted by the FBI and the Department of Justice. No irregularities were found. Whitehouse raised his voice. You're talking about an internal investigation conducted by the same people who handed over the money. Is that your definition of transparency? A murmur of approval swept through the room, and several journalists leaned forward, sensing a viral moment approaching. Bondi gritted her teeth, aware that every second broadcast live would be dissected online. She replied coldly, Implications are not evidence, Senator. If you have facts, present them. Otherwise, respect the procedures in place. Whitehouse leaned in, his eyes fixed on her. The facts are simple. A $50,000 cash payment, delivered in a paper bag, has never been traced. And every time we ask the question, we get another closed door. It's this kind of opacity that destroys public trust. The tension rose another notch. Even the aides behind Bondi seemed uncomfortable. The prosecutor, realizing that the public leaned towards the senator, attempted a last-minute maneuver. If you want to talk about transparency, let's discuss your relationships with certain private companies funded by the government, Senator. But Whitehouse cut her off. You can try to smear me, madam, but I'm not the one who lost $50,000 of public money. A chilling silence fell over the room. Bondi looked away, searching for an escape. In 47 seconds, the silence that followed Senator Whitehouse's last remark was heavier than any accusation. Pam Bondi glanced at her notes for a moment, but her hands betrayed a slight nervousness. The cameras, focused on her face, captured every micro-expression, the furrowed brow, the quicker breath, the slight tremble of her lower lip. Across from her, Kash Patel, who had remained in the background until now, decided to intervene to deflect the storm. Senator Whitehouse, with all due respect, insinuating that Ms. Bondi or I have something to hide without any tangible evidence is irresponsible. You talk about a paper bag, Kash. This is theater, not a legal procedure. The senator did not flinch. His tone became even more precise. Mr. Patel, you oversaw national security funds, and $1 billion from the budget has disappeared under your administration. This is no longer theater, it's accounting. And you can't wipe it away with a wave of your hand. A murmur ran through the room. Several journalists exchanged glances, some already drafting their headlines. The missing billion of Kash Patel? Pam Bondi tried to regain control. That figure of $1 billion missing is absurd. It involves budget reallocations authorized by Congress. Nothing illegal. But Whitehouse cut her off, relentless. Then why do these reallocations not appear in any quarterly reports? Why did your own internal auditors report serious inconsistencies? The tension became electric. Patel placed his hands on the table, leaning toward the microphone. Senator, you are trying to turn a budget discussion into a political trial. You know very well that these figures are confidential for national security reasons. Whitehouse slammed his fist on the table. National security is not an excuse to hide embezzlement. The American people have the right to know where their money is going. In the room, some congressional aides began to whisper frantically. Others pulled out their phones to check budget documents. Pam Bondi, realizing that the situation was slipping completely out of her control, took on a sharper tone. Senator, if you insinuate that we have committed fraud, I advise you to make an official accusation. Otherwise, this hearing is over. In 47 seconds after the session resumed, the tone changed radically. The senators returned with new documents, and this time, it was an organized offensive. Senator Hawthorne spoke first, placing a stack of files stamped confidential. He addressed Kash Patel in a cold voice. These documents come from the Office of the Comptroller General. They indicate that over $987 million have been transferred to so-called temporary accounts without clear traceability. Can you explain this? Patel blinked, surprised, then attempted a quick justification. These accounts are used for emergency operations, under legal supervision. Everything is perfectly compliant. But Hawthorne immediately retorted, perfectly compliant? Then why were these funds transferred to a shell company registered in Delaware, created just 2 weeks before the operation? A shiver ran through the room. Pam Bondi, who had been silent until now, tried to intervene. Senator, you don't understand how contractors work in national security. Hawthorne cut her off sharply. Ms. Bondi, don't play with words. These shell companies are not contractors. They are hiding places for public money. The atmosphere became electric. Patel tightened his tie and shot back. What you are insinuating is serious, Senator. You are playing with the reputation of entire institutions based on speculation. But the senator then pulled out a document signed by Patel himself. This is not speculation. It's your signature, Mr. Patel. You authorized the transfer on April 3rd, 2022. Do you want to deny your own signature? Patel stood frozen, unable to respond immediately. The cameras captured his evasive glance, and a wave of shock swept through the room. Pam Bondi slowly closed her binder, realizing that the battle was taking an uncontrollable turn. The senator concluded with surgical precision, "We are not talking about accounting errors. We are talking about diversions hidden under the guise of national security. And if Congress discovers that you lied under oath, the consequences will be historic." Whispers turned into uproar. Some senators were already calling for Patel's suspension from his duties, while others demanded an immediate federal investigation. Pam Bondi, her gaze fixed, simply murmured. Less than a minute after the signatures were revealed, the Senate chamber turned into a true political battlefield. The cameras remained focused on Patel, whose heavy silence spoke louder than any answer. Senator Hawthorne wasted no time and projected a graph showing the gradual disappearance of funds. "This is what we call a billion-dollar leak," he declared in a dry tone. Pam Bondi tried to regain the floor, choosing her words carefully. "Senator, this data is being interpreted out of context. The transfers were intended for international cooperation programs approved by the Treasury Department." But Hawthorne immediately countered, not giving her a chance to breathe. "Then why are these programs not listed in any official report?" The argument fell like a guillotine. Patel then attempted to defend himself. "The reports are classified for national security reasons." This time, it was Senator Monroe who intervened, raising his voice. "Stop using that excuse, Mr. Patel. You say national security every time you want to hide something." Applause erupted from part of the room, a sign that public opinion was following the debate live. Pam Bondi, visibly tense, whispered to Patel, "Don't respond anymore. Any statement will be used against us." But it was already too late. Hawthorne coldly concluded, "What we see here is not an administrative error. It is a cover-up. And as long as you refuse to provide the documents, we will assume you have something to hide." The audience held its breath. Patel, pale, could only say, "You are making a mistake. Everything will eventually become clear." Yet in his eyes, panic was clearly visible. In a matter of seconds, the confidence he had displayed at the beginning of the hearing had completely vanished. Pam Bondi looked away, realizing that this battle would be much longer than expected. The financial scandal had just reached a point of no return. In barely 47 seconds, the tension escalated. Journalists rushed to their phones, broadcasting live the most damning excerpts. The hashtag Bondi Patel scandal exploded on social media, fueled by thousands of outraged comments. In the room, the chairwoman of the commission called for silence. "We will now examine the bank statements related to these transactions." On the giant screen, a series of transfers appeared, each linked to secondary accounts registered in foreign subsidiaries. Hawthorne spoke slowly, weighing each word. "These are federal funds, and they were transferred to entities that don't even exist in the public contracts registry." Patel attempted a nervous smile, but his face betrayed his anxiety. "These entities were created temporarily to facilitate rapid funding for international operations," he replied. "Facilitation or concealment?" Monroe shot back. The tone turned icy. Even Pam Bondi seemed to hesitate before adding, "We acted within the law. All movements were validated by our legal services." "Then show us the validations," retorted Hawthorne. The silence that followed was more telling than a confession. Bondi nervously rummaged through her files, but no document seemed to prove her claims. The room began to murmur. Cameras zoomed in on Patel, whose hands trembled slightly. A senator from the opposition then intervened, voice firm. "Mr. Patel, did you know that these accounts were linked to a shell company owned by a former FBI consultant?" Patel froze, unable to respond. The senator continued, "You said earlier that you had nothing to hide. So, why are these funds ending up there?" The silence stretched again, longer, heavier. Finally, Patel took a deep breath and replied, "I am not aware of those details." In a matter of moments, the gravity of the situation became evident to all. Cameras captured every micro-expression of Pam Bondi and Kash Patel, two high-ranking officials caught in the eye of the media and political storm. The public quickly understood that this was not just a matter of $50,000 or obscure transactions. It was a glaring demonstration of deliberate maneuvers to circumvent the law and conceal the truth from Congress. Tension escalated further when an opposition senator directly asked Bondi, Did you coordinate with Patel to delay critical information about the budget and accounts related to Epstein? Bondi hesitated, her fingers nervously playing with a pen, before responding in a weak, drawn-out voice. We followed standard verification procedures. Hawthorne, who had been observing the scene from the beginning, slowly shook his head. Don't try to mask the facts behind empty words. You both admitted to strategic delays. The American people deserve total transparency, not bureaucratic excuses. The murmur of journalists turned into a buzz of indignation. Social media ignited, turning the hearing into a viral event. Legal experts immediately highlighted the extent of the wrongdoing: obstruction of Congress, manipulation of federal funds, and concealment of evidence. The pressure became unbearable for Patel and Bondi, whose faces betrayed growing panic. Even their closest political allies began to express doubts. In the hour that followed, the first resignations were announced, closely followed by thorough federal investigations. The chain of command at Justice and the FBI was called into question, and the credibility of public institutions reached a historically low level. Van Hollen, sitting quietly in his seat, observed the scene with satisfaction. His methodical work and insight had not only exposed massive corruption but demonstrated that the law applied to everyone, without exception. This moment would be remembered as a perfect example of how meticulous preparation, precise questioning, and strategic patience could overturn careers, restore accountability, and remind everyone that no one was above the law.